Hello everybody and welcome to another Visualization Network how-to video. Today's topic, interactive area charts in Excel, but with no programming. I'm your host Tom Crawford, and let's just jump right in. Pretty simple so far. So all we need to do then is add a few basic controls on this form so that we can actually manipulate them live. So we're going to add in a column here for fruit. We're going to add a column in for the adjustment. We're going to add a column for value, and then whether or not we want to include that. Now you could simply go through and type in each of the names of the fruit in these fields, but through experience it's better to always link data to the source. So we're going to do the same thing, and rather than retyping the names, we're going to put an equal sign in, go to the Data tab, and click on raspberries and have that be the top. And then we are going to do the same thing for each value in the list. Now, having said that, we've got all our fruit labels in there, so that makes it very easy. We're also going to add the value. You don't necessarily need this field here, but I find it helps so you don't have to keep flipping back and forth to see, is this the 100% value or are we increasing it? So one of the ways to do that, now that all these fields exist, is just to copy the values. Now notice it didn't pull in the correct value, it pulled in what would probably be February's data, but we can actually replace the value in the field of F, which is the field that it's currently at, with C, which is the percentage value. It made 10 replacements, and that simply, now we have both of these fields pointing at the data on our Data tab. Notice that's column C rather than column F, which is what the copy did by default. So now all we have to do is add the controls. Now here's where it gets a little different, and if you've never worked in Excel, you may wonder how we're going to add these controls. There's actually a hidden tab, and actually it's even really hidden in 2007 of Excel. If you go under Excel Options, right on the Popular tab, there's an option for Show the Developer tab. Click that, and click OK, and all of a sudden we have a new tab on the top. It's important that while we're doing this that we're in design mode, which is what is selected by default, and then we're going to insert an ActiveX control. There are form controls. Those fit for a different topic for a different day. But today we're going to use ActiveX controls. These controls are also what limits this to being PC only, since ActiveX is a PC only function. We're going to use the spin button as well as the checkbox today. We don't want to use the radial button because that says which one of these, so I select the right answer, versus the checkbox, which is select all that apply. So we're going to use both of these, but we're going to start with a spin button. So we'll select that, and we actually just draw it on our form. So there it is. By default, it put it in left, right. We're also now going to right mouse click on it and choose Properties. So this may look a little scary, but don't get overwhelmed. It's just a series of values that we can control related to our spin button. So, for example, we can link this cell to another cell. So, right now we need to link the spin button to the raspberries field, specifically the raspberries value field. So, we need to go to the Data tab to find out what that is, and that is, move the properties out of the way, raspberries is B23. So we'll go back to our Graph tab, to our control that's already highlighted. We'll type in Data B23. Then we want to also look at our minimums and maximums. You can make these anything you want. I've somewhat arbitrarily said 200% is about as much variation as we want to look at, and maybe as far down as 0 being another value. So You can set those anywhere you want. If you only want 50% growth or you want to look at 300% growth, just change that number to be whatever you think is appropriate. So we also have the option for orientation. In this case, it's already set to the one we want, but we can always select number 1, which just physically forces it to be the orientation that we chose. And in it, which by drawing it, we drew it wider than tall, so therefore it made it that way. We can also change the print object to false. This means if you print this page, it won't print that control. So it just makes it a little bit prettier if there's going to be a printout, because you can't do anything on the printout with the controls, so you might as well not have them print on the printout of the page if you use it for that. And then finally, small change. Again, somewhat arbitrarily, I've chosen to make that 10, so that means we're going to only be able to change with each click of the adjustment to 10% rather than 1%. At 1%, the changes are a little small in the graph and hard to see. At 10%, that's pretty reasonable. You could choose 5% or 17% or 25%. 10 seemed like a very reasonable number to choose. So from there, we are pretty much done with that tab. So let's test it. Always good to test. So we're going to go in, and now we've switched out of design mode. That means we're in active running mode. And if we click the adjust button, we should see it change to 110 and 120 and 130. And notice that the raspberry section is growing as a percentage of the whole. And we can no longer go past 200%, so we have double the number of raspberries that we've had. And look how the graph has changed. Or we can reset it back. Or we can go down. So that simply, we now have a control in place. Let's look at one more control, the checkbox. We'll go back into design mode and insert a checkbox. We'll put that right under our include window. And there it is. And just like before, you right mouse click and go to properties. And a very similar properties tab comes up. In this case, we want to still do a linked cell. So we're going to look at the data tab to find out what that is. And for raspberries, it happens to be A23. So we'll do the same as we did before. Go back and put in linked cell, data, A23. And we'll change the print object to false. And everything else stays the same. Notice in this case, because there are no values, we don't have a minimum or a maximum or a small change. And it's a square, so there is no orientation question. So the only thing we really needed to change was the print object and the linked cell. At this point, notice also that it defaults to checked. If you wanted it to default to off, we could always have it do that as well. So now we'll go back into out of design mode and into regular running mode, and if we click this, raspberries disappear. There we go. We have our first fully working piece of interactivity.